there's a misconception, I'm sure, with a lot of people that contracting officers are civilians, but contracting officers can also be soldiers.
They can be active duty. Oh my goodness, the Pentagon is filled with majors, lieutenant colonels, and full birds who are contracting officers.
Yeah, and I've seen some that were maybe like E8s. I don't know if they were necessarily contracting officers or CORs, and if it's a
you can be a senior, NCO and be a contracting officer. The ideally it would be a warrant officer, ideally, but
Yes, because it's like one of those things we got to think about. I talk about on my channel a lot. It's like when it's time to get paid, when it's time to communicate. If it's a 4-day weekend, sometimes civilians work on that other day, but soldiers are not going to be there. So if it's a 4-day weekend or any type of, they got use or lose leave at the end of the year, they're not working, point blank, period. And it may not be anyone to take their place. So, okay, you started as like you were voluntold to be a contracting was it a contracting officer or as a specialist first or a COR and then or just contracting officer straight up?
Contracting up. Well, you know how it goes in the Army. They figured they was like, oh well, if he can be a brigade property book NCOIC, he should be able to hold his own as an interim contracting officer. Well, needless to say, they never got that actual contracting officer, and I was it until I ETS'd out of the military. So
you must have been really sharp. That's a blessing, as you can tell now.
I know, right? I know. So then after that, I went back home to New Orleans, which is where I'm from, and it just so happens Hurricane Katrina. We were a couple years after Hurricane Katrina during this time, and I wound up having to build. I had a huge hand, rather, I'd say, in building the procurement and contracting system in the wake of post-Katrina, New Orleans. If you look it up, disaster number 1603. For people for the smart folks who want to verify, right? But anyway, so I assumed contracting officers duty. That was at a FEMA operation in New Orleans. Got moved to downtown Washington D.C. Once FEMA was no longer needed in New Orleans, the government said, "Hey, we don't want the federal government in our business no more." Funny. Now FEMA was going to put out more than 200 contracts to not only rebuild the city of New Orleans, but to rebuild it so much bigger and better to where they were going to extend downtown across the river. But the state didn't want the scrutiny. They wanted to keep doing what they wanted to do. So FEMA had to leave. So I went to DC. Then after working in contracting in DC, I went back to New Orleans years later and worked for the VA, Southeast Louisiana Veterans Healthcare System. I was one of the contracting officers who had a hand in Project Legacy, the activation of a new $2 billion hospital, VA hospital in New Orleans, which is now one of the leading hospitals in the country for the new direction. So that was a beautiful project. We had to put out probably more than, my goodness, close to $1 billion in contracts to activate that hospital. And then after that, I worked as an independent contractor. Then came out to Houston, where I was a city of Houston procurement officer.
Okay, stop. Wait. You didn't gave us 20 years of history in 3 minutes. Okay, look, let's back up a little bit. So you were a contracting officer in the Army, and then when post Katrina, you worked for FEMA, or were you working with FEMA. Hurricane Katrina? Okay, so you got out of the military.
Yep.
And then and then you got a job at FEMA as a contracting officer?
Well, I started off as an accountable property officer, and FEMA. Correct. Because basically, see, every disaster is a project. The disaster itself is a project. So that's how FEMA works, based on disasters. So that it goes by the disaster numbers. So they had people who was basically giving contracts to their friends.
Yeah, some things change, some things remain the same, right?
And so I literally went to one of the site directors and said, "Hey, we need a procurement program. We need a procurement program so that no one gets in trouble here."
So there was okay. We'll leave that where it is. All right.
I made sure I had something to back me up first. Just how we have the federal acquisition regulation, which is the one that governs all the agencies. I did some digging and found out, yes, there was a Homeland Security acquisition regulation, which of course is a subset of the FAR. So it's just how the DFAR would be to the FAR. The Homeland Security one was the one that would govern FEMA, because for those who don't know, FEMA is a sub agency to Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah, I just recently found that out, like
Yeah.
yesterday, years old. So with that, so that's a great like segue, because when it comes to the regulations, like people, they'll try to trump me, they'll try to trump you according to the FAR because they got it from Chat GPT. But like when it comes to the
And they
FEMA,
Chat
it say,
GPT be wrong sometimes, y'all.
oh yeah, it be lying, it be lying.
Yeah,
But
it
like
be wrong.
with the FAR for FEMA in particular, I'm looking at that as more like an addendum to the actual FAR. Do some things supersede the regular FAR when it's in FEMA, or is
Nope,
it
nope,
just
nope.
okay?
FEMA, they can only add. They can only add to. They
Got it.
can't. They can't modify or take anything away. They can only add. And the only things that they can add, it has to be. It has to be agency essential, agency specific, but it still can't be anything that breaches the actual federal acquisition regulation.
I
They
see.
can only add. They cannot modify or take away from.
Right. And I remember that term in everything pretty much. So make
Yeah.
sure y'all hit like on this video, because I see a lot of people in here and I don't see the likes matching. So make sure you hit like and ask questions as well. So you were a contracting officer for the Army while you were in the Army. Then you were a contracting officer for FEMA, created
Yeah.
a program basically of a regulation of people to follow. Then you were with the VA
The
as
VA.
a contracting officer. And then you said the city of something before I cut you off.
City of Houston Strategic Procurement Division. Now, here I want to say something that's important for people to understand. In a lot of cases, acquisitions and procurement. When we say contracting, what we're really talking about is the government's acquisition and procurement program. That which and if they look it up for those Chat GPT people, it should say something like this. When we're talking about acquisitions and procurement in government, that's just the government's process by which they acquire or procure goods and services with use of appropriated funds. So they acquire goods and services by way of contract, with use of appropriated funds. That's all acquisitions and procurement means. But usually, in a federal government, we'll say acquisitions, but in municipality government, we'll say procurement. But they're used interchangeably. You can
Yes.
so if you say federal procurement, you're still saying federal contracting and federal acquisitions. You're saying the same thing.
No, that's a good point, because people will try to make it like so technical. But like when I first started, when I was looking for the different vendor sites or anything, I would just put in that city, that state, whatever, procurement, even if it was Department of Veterans Affairs in Atlanta, procurement, and it'll get me to where I need to get to. So yeah,
Yep.
I appreciate that. It's all the same. Let me ask you this. This is not even a part of our questions. How are you with micro purchases? Did you get a little guy contracts with these micro purchases? Because boy, that has been the bane of my existence, like trying to get those.
So I'll say this:
Mm.
if if they could show us reason why we would not use Uline or
Ooh,
they
what?
and some of them do good. Some of them do good. It's all about because the first thing they want to ask is, well, why would the government use me and not Uline or Granger?
Because
You
it's available, like helping small businesses, right?
Yep. But also, it's all about being able to show something in some kind of 1 or 2 page proposal like thing. Because of course, you don't really need a proposal unless you're responding to an RFP. But
Right.
it's good to give like a short form proposal that explains to the government how this is how we are a more convenient option than Uline and Granger, because because we don't have, for example, you can say something like, because we don't have such a large clientele base to answer to, we have more time to give the agency individual attention and shape shift the way you need. Or we can do things that because Granger and Uline is so big, They may have only 2 or 3 delivery options. Maybe we can come all the way to where you're at and bring you a cup of coffee with that. You know, I'm being silly, but it's you want to think about ways that you can help resolve the agency's pain points, because a lot of times they have so much on their desk. It's all about coming up with ideas to make it more convenient for them. And if you can show that it's more convenient to use us than it's large companies, that's a hint. Remember, large companies are mass production oriented, meaning that they don't have as much time to focus on the individual empathetic things. So empathy, what can you get ChatGPT to say about how empathy ties into the needs of this agency? Those are ways,
Okay, and look, we off script, and okay. For people that don't know, micro purchasing is a threshold, like smaller, easier way to procure services, and it's usually extremely fast, usually with a credit card or something
Yep.
of the sort up, and it went up to 15,000 as of October 1st of this year. So in basically 14,999, they should be able to just say, oh, swoop, don't even need quotes, right? You can just buy it. So that's something that I had started chasing myself. Actually, a contracting officer from the VA kind of chased me. And I, that all those same things you're saying, I sat with him and was like, look, how can I help you with all these things you got on your list, and you don't want to bid for something. You don't want to put it out for bid.
That's a lot, Sheena. It's putting them publishing those solicitations.
I was like, Lord have mercy. I only seen one and I was about to pass out.
It's like sometimes it could be like a 40-step process. It can be like a 40-step process within the agency's procurement, steps, just to get a project moving. Just for one project. So if we just to get one solicitation published. So if we can get around that somehow and justify it the way that we justify it, so many people don't understand how you can actually shape the way procurement is done from your own company. If you can just give the agency a creative solution that shows that you've studied the agency's pain points, that allows them to get around having to go the competitive bid route with everything.
Okay, so I got a couple more questions on this because I really want to know, especially you did the VA, all right? He's like, I did not come here to talk about this. But like,
oh, that's fine. No, we're here to help folks, whatever it takes. Yeah.
I really want people to understand that realm. So, essentially I always joke, and people say to stop joking, that I scrub toilets, right? So we do other stuff too, but essentially we're doing facilities. So there's not a whole lot of creativity in that, besides, if you say you're using green products, the government don't care about green products because they're trying to get cheaper, right? It's supposed to be better, faster, cheaper. But in the realm of something that's, office supplies, like you said, you can get that from Uline, Granger, whatever, then what would you want to hear? What would make tickle your fancy if I'm coming to you with pencils and pens, or cleaning actual cleaning services? Like, what is my wow to you that you're like, thank you, I really do need that thing faster, like more people, like what?
For me, I know when I was working as a contracting officer, when people can say things like, look, we have actually done some due diligence, and we realize that you guys sometimes don't have the time to wait on Uline and Granger's, wait on their inventory replenishment process. Because think about this. Those folks, when an agency has to order office supplies or small equipment, right? Guess what? Uline and Granger, those types of companies, because of how big they are not modifying their inventory replenishment processes to accommodate the agency. They're arrogant. They're already in this game. So if you can tell the agency, hey, with us, you don't have to worry. You don't have to wait for our inventory cycles. Not only are we going to deliver on demand, but then we're going to ask you to send us a quick, spreadsheet of the different functions within your offices who usually need this kind of pen the most, who usually need that kind of, this type of equipment the most. That's because those are the things that attacks their pain points. So for example, you're literally going to send that agency's contracting officer or purchasing team, rather, you're going to send their purchasing team a memorandum that says, "Hey, we know you guys have some pain points. Can you give us a few of the things that will make your processes easier?" Right?
Memo.
A memo. I'm telling people, and by the way, that memorandums, look, these federal agencies, they love memorandums, by the way. They love
Mm.
memorandums.
Go ahead and put memo. Put memo in the chat. I didn't even
yes.
know this. Go ahead. Sorry.
If you put a memorandum together, you're speaking their language. Think about when you were in the military, Sheena. If we wanted something from CIF or DPW or
Yeah,
whomever, everything's a memo.
that's true.
They're not accustomed to civilian companies communicating that way. So get all of the federal
Oh,
agencies. All of the federal agencies, they pulled the play out of the military's playbook with the memorandum thing. So if you have a company that want to contract with the government and you communicate using memos, you're already showing that you speak in a way that mirrors the way that workforce does operations, which is gonna inadvertently make them more comfortable with you than people who've never even heard the term memorandum.
ooh, that's a key and a half. Oh my goodness. Okay,
Yeah.
truly. So those little things get you to the front door, right? So,
Yes.
so for example, we use Uline and the supplies a lot, but what about services, right? Again, going back to scrubbing the
Oh,
toilet. So what am I like? We noticed that your facility is dirty as hell because when I come up in here as a service member, it's dirty in the corner. Like, how am I identifying those pain points too? Like, but isn't that kind of like,
yes.
oh
I,
shoot,
I would because that if you know people who do those things, you actually coming inside and paying attention to the facilities, that's letting them know, or that's letting you know as a potential vendor, or as a representative for a vendor you might know, that look, whoever is supposed to be doing this stuff ain't getting it done. And what's another thing that's being pushed in the government right now, ever since COVID? Cleanliness. We want to now every government agency, whether it doesn't matter whether it's the VA, whether it's Department of Commerce, Department of Agriculture, Department of Defense, Department of the Interior, it doesn't matter. They want to make sure that their facilities are now operating in a way to slow down the spread of germs.
just saying those words slow down the spread of germs. I think that would hit anybody, right? Like
Yeah.
those
And,
key
and
little points.
yeah. And see, people. So basically, what this is really a conversation about how can I help these people solve problems? Because one of the things that I said in my most recent ads that I put up on LinkedIn and on the main channel, on the main YouTube channel, was contracting officers don't care about helping you win a contract. They care about
That's a fact.
they care about getting problems off their desk.
Yeah,
That's what they
yeah,
care about. They care because at any given moment, that purchasing team, contracting team, y'all by the way, y'all, same thing. Contracting, acquisitions, purchasing, procurement. These are the same people.
yeah, yeah.
That purchasing team at any moment, one person can have 20 RFPs that he's supposed to get advertised. That's a lot. That's very stressful. So if you can identify a problem that will prevent him from even having to advertise that RFP, you're grandfathering yourself in with that agency.
So, okay, so you're never aggravated or annoyed by someone sending you essentially it's almost like an unsolicited proposal, just a mini version. So you're okay
Yes.
with that. As long as it's short, sweet, and to the point.
Yes. Oh, yes.
What about
Yes.
calling?
Huh?
What about calling?
Calling, it just depends on who you get.
What about
Usually,
for you? With all the agencies you work for, if someone's like, "Hi, my name is Sheena Parker. My company is da 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 da," we would love to scrub your toilets. Like,
see, I was one of those. I was one of those people who always feel sorry for people. So I'm gonna sit there. I, I'm one of those empathetic people. So I was so And what's funny is it's hit and miss. Every other person is actually like that. Now, I'm gonna tell you this. A lot of people I worked with, I would teach my employees to be empathetic like that, and here's
Mm,
why. Because see, and I'm gonna just give y'all a little game from the inside. See, a lot of people on these contracting teams, right? They're just thinking about how stressed out they are, how much stuff they got to get off their desk. But then, if they realize it, if they think about it, the people who are calling them, it's they're not looking for handouts, they're calling to help me.
yeah.
So when I really thought about that, I said, wait, if I just sit and start listening to some of these folks when they call in, a lot of these have solutions, that they can give us before we even have to advertise the problem. So a lot more of them are starting to think that way now. Before we get off the call, I'm going to give them, I had it next to me. I'm going to give them the FAR provision that authorizes unsolicited proposals. Hear why I'm saying that? Because when you call folks, when you call and send an unsolicited proposal, you want to have that FAR provision written on your memorandum. That it makes you look like, hey, look, I'm calling to help you. And by the way, your regulation authorizes me to send this email.
Can I put that in the subject line? Because like
Yeah,
you ain't gonna open it.
that's right. I would.
Okay.
That's what I would do. Yep, that's what I would.
Oh
That's what I would do.
man. Oh, this is look, we gotta pause for a hot second, because this is like on fire. I'm hot. So thank you so much, Ivan, for the super chat. Truly, truly appreciate it. Long time supporter of the channel. And he put 2025. So I guess we going out 2025 with a bang, okay?
That's
Because
right. That's
this is
right.
like this is gold even for me. So I really, really appreciate you sharing that, because just those little tips, people will bid on contracts and then feel, intimidated by the paperwork. But if you're a phone girly or a phone dude, and you can just call or to send a little memo to say, this is what I want to do, and put that in the subject line and identify those things just by that one tweak of your communication style, you're saying that it's actually way more beneficial to even bid on a contract. That's
Yep.
that's straight gold. That's bars. Okay. So make sure y'all hit like on this video. I'm already super excited. When I get off this phone, I'll be up all night. Like, let me write a memo to all these different people. So where can people find, like, so is the best practice to get a contract and officer's information like off of Sam? Like you just go down and look at different opportunities and just make notes of names and
Look up. I would say look up the network contracting office. Now, some agencies are going to call it something different because, as you know, these agencies are so big. There are going to be multiple different contracting offices within different regions, different
yeah,
localities, different networks, different directorates, things like that. So that language may change from agency to agency, region to region. But I always say look up that network contracting office because there are various directorates and networks within each agency. So hopefully the people listening, they're writing this down so but understanding that it's not locked into this language. The language is so important to understand. The language, the way we use words change from agency to agency. So you can even Google Chat GPT. Hey, how do I find a networking contracting office for various different federal agencies? Right?
very good.
It'll point you in the right direction. And then when you go, when you start seeing these different phone numbers and these different activities within the various government branches come up, you will you it it'll pretty much point you in the right direction. You can say something like, hey, let's say an agency you don't hear people talk about a lot of times. Department of the Interior, Department of Commerce, or Department of Energy. And hint, I would go after those agencies. You always hear people talking about Department of Defense, VA, FEMA, and some others. But I would go after those ones. Those, right? Well, how do I find the various network contracting offices within the Atlanta metropolitan region or within the Philadelphia metro region or the Dallas Fort Worth region or Miami, right? And when it pulls it up, it's going to change the name. It's going to correct the language for you because that area may not use network contracting office. They may call it directorate contracting office. or they may call it their director of procurement of procurement and acquisitions. But or they may say they may say our purchasing office, but it's the same thing. So you guys out there, you have to catch these different terminologies. Contracting, purchasing, acquisitions, procurement. It's the same thing. That's where you find your contracting officers and your procurement officers, who are virtually the same people as your contracting officers. And
So let me
then,
ask. Go
yep.
ahead.
Oh, go
Go
ahead, go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead, go.
I was just gonna say. So, one of the things that I found too, like in my industry, facilities is closely related to construction, right? So, I've like often communicated with the facilities manager, which they may not have necessarily maybe the purchasing power, but they have the influence. Is that also someone to get to know? Like,
Yeah, yes, because because so within the acquisitions, contracting, procurement system, see, remember, we serve the service lines. They're our clients. So this is how so if you're a company that's looking for a contract, right? The government is your client. But those of us who work in the contracting and procurement off, those of us who's actually writing and giving out the contracts, guess who our clients are the different our clients and departments are the different departments within
buildings
our
and yep.
agency.
Mm-hmm.
So the procurement and acquisitions office, we're pretty much just the underwriting people, but they're the ones who actually choose who they want.
And look, and
we
that is
just
a
let them
fact.
know we just let them know based on compliance metrics, this is who you can choose.
Yes.
So the acquisitions and contracting officers, your contract and procurement team, we're basically the underwriters
Yeah.
that lets the customer know who they can choose. The customer is going to be the facilities manager, the logistics manager, the HR manager. Those are our clients. They're the ones who actually choose who they want based on who we qualify in the contracting office.
That is so important for people to understand. I have actually been referred to the FBA because the construction manager thought I was not qualified and I was overly relying on my sub. So the contracting officer was actually upset. You could hear it in her voice. She's like, I don't understand, but they're saying that you're not qualified. This is way back in the beginning stages of, me trying to get in here, get in where I fit in. But
Yeah.
as it was we were even the lowest bidder. So we technically won the contract, but when they went through their other, because what do they say? You're the apparent awardee, but you're not
Mhm.
actually the awardee yet until it goes through who it needs to go through. And in that case, it was a construction management team, and they were like, she ain't even in. She doing a New York contract. She ain't even in New York. This is fishy, So like those people they can actually, remove you from the whole award. So that's important for
Yes.
people to know. The contracting officers, yeah, bring them lunch, but sometimes you might need to bring the engineer lunch, or you're not supposed to do that. But I'm just
Yep.
saying, get
Yep.
cozy with the people who the clients are, just like you said.
And because basically what Sheena is saying, and it's pretty accurate, is that basically, to sum it up, those folks that Sheena's describing, those are going to be your project managers. The program managers, they're going to be the project manager throughout that project. What's the
Yeah.
project? That contract is the project. So they're the eyes and the ears. They're going to be out there at the site. That facilities manager, or that logistics man, or if it's a logistics contract, the logistics director. If it's the contract that helps fiscal or HR, that person of that, they're the eyes and ears. So they have a lot of influence over who gets it, over who
No,
gets the contract and who keeps it. Because if they're the ones, if there's an incidental, if you're always late, or you're always MIA when it's time to answer incidentals, they're the ones who's going to send that letter of reprimand to the contracting officer, and that contracting officer is going to go right to that part of the FAR that talks about timely response, timely resolution to incidentals, and they're going to give you your first strike.
I done been struck out. So it wasn't our fault. It was COVID. It wasn't our fault. But just believe, and this is why I got to tell my team. I got to tell a quick little additive, because my team, when you're working with people who are like on the ground, right? They're phone people. They pick up the phone and call. So there's stuff happening behind the scenes that I have no idea. I have no email, no nothing. So them jokers will come back from 5-6 years ago and be like, this is everything that we recorded that has happened. And I'm like, completely out of the loop. And that's a great segue into when you get a contract, right? Or even if you're going after a contract, can you hire someone to do the work for you?
No, the government hires you. Huh?
Not at all?
Well, here's how that works.
Okay,
here's how that works. Here's how that works, right? So once again, I think you did, first off, you did a great video on that. The whole middleman theory, right? You did a great video on that. And you even put up the FAR anchor for them, which is, of course, FAR 52, excuse me, as we say, subpar 52.219-14, limitations on subcontracting. So basically, right, if I hire a surgeon, I don't expect him to outsource the surgery.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's
a good one.
You know what I mean? Now, if I hire let's say if I hire a surgery team, right? Maybe it's a neurosurgery team, and a chief surgeon he's a neurosurgeon, and he has some orthopedic surgeons that's working under him, since this is a neuromuscular operation, right? I know all these terms because I worked in the VA, y'all. But anyway, but
I think we can all kind of get what you're
so
saying.
I know how to sound smart. So, but anyway, so
very helpful.
But so yeah, I be trying to sound smart. But look, if you have people on your team and you're managing a team, that's good. So for example, right, you can't just get a contract, and you can't just get a contract and sub it out and you're going hands off. No, that you have to you remember, you're the prime, which means you have to be performing the core of the work proposed. There are various ways you can do that. It can be you hands-on with your people, or maybe it's your company, you're the CEO, and you 1099 your workforce. Or if it's a whole other company that's going to be doing the brunt of the work, then maybe you guys need to work out a joint venture where, for the purposes of this contract, you're now adjoined as one. And since you're the one doing the bidding, you're functioning as a management services, as a management servicing organization, management servicing organization, basically. So those are the ways you clear that. But like I told you, when you and I first got on the call, there was this popular video that was going around Facebook and YouTube, and a guy was saying, yeah, you can build a whole business just being a middleman. Get it and sub it out. Get it and sub it out. Look, people have gotten locked up over this. Over the one big these one, especially when you're talking about $40-50 million, which is common in the federal government. Just so y'all know, $40-50 million is not even considered a huge contract for some agencies. But the dollar amount is what they're looking at. What they're looking at is the dollar amount, and is the fact that they can't just be squandering money on getting hustled.
Yes. And I want to highlight that really, really quick. So yesterday I did we did a private webinar, and that was one of the biggest things we talked about, is like, I was on a $3 million contract, and the contracting officer was like, I hate these small contracts. To us, we made it, right? But that's 2 tiers in a bucket for a contracting officer. They're working with multi-million-dollar contracts.
Oh yeah,
often 8-9 figures, probably even more often than some of the smaller ones.
Especially if you're talking about defense or VA or Homeland Security. Sheesh,
yes. And so, and even to go back to what you said about a joint venture. So yes, there's so many things that happens in this process. And besides just it being illegal, right, to just have someone else do the work and you get the contract, you're marrying someone who is in control of your business. You never met them, never seen them. They're in Alaska, you're in Atlanta, and you're like, I'm just gonna find someone to do the work. Now, the people that follow me a lot, I know you're so tired of me talking about this and hearing about it, but I just, I wanted to make sure I brought someone in who was actually on the other side and saw people do this. But like, you're even a joint venture, that's a marriage. You guys come together and you made a baby, literally. Even if you do teaming, if you do subprime, you guys are in bed. You guys are under the sheets. And you're just finding someone to do it for you is extremely dangerous, especially when they're in a different location. You're not going. You have no idea how they're representing your business. They could be stealing
it. Contract control, right, Sheena? We call it contract control. You're losing contract control.
Put contract control in the chat, because this is
you don't have contract control, because here's what you guys have to consider when you get a contract and sub it out. Think about Mad Day.
Who day?
Mad, M-A-D, Mad Day. Mad Day.
Mad Day, what's that?
Basically, how you say, oh yeah, she cool right now. He's cool right now, but just wait till Mad Day comes. Oh. So you just sub something out and mad, and I'm to spell that phonetically, Mike Alpha Delta, Mad Day. When Mad Day comes, and you and that person had an argument at the bar, the person that you subbing it out to, remember, when they decide to go quiet on you, and the only place you see them is talking trash on Facebook, but they ain't answering their phone when the government is calling for these incidentals, and they didn't communicate to you what's going on, and you have no site control, the government's not coming to them. The government's coming to you as the prime. So that person gets to take whatever money they got this far and disappear. You are debarred from contracting from the government. And if it's a contract, and this is what when I talk about the jail part, if it's a contract that involves sensitive information, now you could be looking at prison time. You trusted someone else with something that also had sensitive or classified information. And those of you who think you're ready to contract with Department of Defense, Homeland Security, Department of the Interior, a lot of these agencies that handles a lot of high-level information, you have to consider that. When you can have a contract that's dealing with transporting items, but if you're transporting items that's also attached to documents that have classified that discusses classified material, now this is more than just being debarred from contracting or contracts. Now somebody's looking at prison time, because we know how our government is. You don't necessarily had been doing something, I don't know, that's considered a crime per se, but the fact that you have access to information that they don't want you having.
And the people that have been following my channel, I did the series about the botched FEMA contract. I did 3 videos on that. And ignorance is not an excuse. You can't say, well, I ain't know, or this person was supposed to help me and they didn't. Yep. They don't give a damn. I've been told specifically by a contracting officer, I don't give a damn about your sub. I was like, you cussing me out via email? Like, can I tell somebody about it? They were like, I don't give a damn.
Sheena, if them people have been in the government more than 5 or 10 years, they can say whatever they want.
Period. And I just
it's like an act of Congress to fire them, so that they don't trust me. If they feel like you throwing them, if they feel like you got them against the ropes, you're gonna be every cuss word in the world.
And I was fighting for my life, so I was like, put my sub. I was using everything, all the stuff. They did not care. So that's like, this is real life stuff. This is stuff he's seen on his side, and stuff I've seen on my side as a contractor. And I'm telling you, like, once everything is cute until money is involved. And then you got a sub, even if things are good for a while, it may not be good for forever. I've had to let go several of my subs because they went rogue. I mean, they have life stuff that happens, and then now we're not friends no more. And now it's like, oh my goodness, you threatening my life over something I can't even control. So you just never know how that goes. And when people are just jumping into business, especially the stuff that you guys don't understand and don't know, and it's a contract that's underwater welding, and you're like, yeah, I can do that. It's just a contract. These people on the internet are telling me that I just got to find someone that can do it. Do that to a point. You know, you got to step in and find someone else. There's probably only one person that can do underwater welding. So where's the next person going to come? You can't, you're not doing it. So there's so many things that happen with that you have to make sure that you're paying attention to when you're bidding on something that you can understand, that makes sense. And the more money it is, everybody want to make the millies. And the more money it is, the more headache it's going to be. Believe that. Believe. More to lose.
Them folks don't play around with that stuff.
At all. So we have a fresh Progress Beauty. I'm a researcher who does projects for the Gartner, Deloitte, Lockheed Martin, and the big boys are doing this every day. That's a fact. I mean, and they don't care. They got billions and billions and billions, and they got so many contracts. So messing up your little business is nothing to them.
That's nothing. They don't care. They don't care.
Please believe that. So when it comes, we talked a little bit about who's held accountable. So are there any, especially with being on the city side, here in Georgia, there's a couple of counties where they work directly with the sub. Like, let's say for me, I'm the prime, I hire a sub, and that particular county will sometimes work with us individually, even though that person is my sub. Have you seen where, they hold the sub completely accountable ever?
Never. The more they'll do, they might, if they see something being done wrong on a site or within a project, they'll get pissed off, quietly get pissed off. They may come in, they might come and throw a couple sarcastic or facetious comments at the sub. But guess what? When that sub, by the time that sub turns around, there's going to already be 10 emails that then hit that prime.
Wow, looks like your hiring's making a lot of people happy.
ZipRecruiter's new tool, Zip Intro, is a game changer. It saved me.
Yeah. So just know, again, it doesn't matter if your sub bails out on you. I had a lady call me crying one time. It was a laundry contract, and the sub disappeared off the face of this earth. She doesn't know if they're allowed to this day. And it was in a different state than where she resided, pretty far across the country.